Call this meeting to order. It is Tuesday, April 16th. This is the Sioux Falls City Council Informational Meeting. We're meeting at Carnegie Town Hall. Good to have all of you here live, and those of you that are watching us online at siouxfalls.org and on TV at CityLink. Good to have you all here. We will start this afternoon with a staff report from Jim David. Jim, you want to come forward?
Good afternoon, Council. Jim David, City Council staff. I'm happy to report that the Fire Sprinkler Task Force has been making great stride and should be ready to make a final recommendation to the Public Services Committee by their May 14th meeting. Over the last month, the task force, which includes Council Member Anderson Jr., builders, architects, sprinkler experts, and city staff, have been looking at costs and life safety associated with sprinklers in new multifamily apartments with 16 or less units. One of their final meetings is scheduled actually for this Thursday at 9 a.m. in these chambers, and they will be discussing incentives and insurance savings associated with sprinklers. And finally, Councilor Anderson Jr. and city staff continue their work through the taxi cab ordinances. Possible recommendations may include consolidating responsibilities to just 2 departments instead of the current 3 departments, utilizing technology to enhance communications between those 2 departments, and enforcement. Staff will provide an update at the May Public Services Committee meeting, but it's not expected to be a final recommendation. Happy to entertain any questions.
Great, thank you, Jim. Questions for Jim? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We should have in our staff report this week put the City Clerk Lori Hogstad as item B, and so I'm going to just make kind of an executive decision and do that before we go to open discussion. So Lori, I'd have you come forward as part of our staff report.
All right. Thank you very much for taking the time to let me update you on several topics that are have come up in the last couple weeks. We'll start with petitions. The City Clerk's office finished the petition. Oh, thank you for adjusting that. Finished our petition verification for the Spelleberg Pool petitions. We received these at the end of March, and a total of 392 petitions were submitted. And the total number of signatures when we went through to verify began at 7,496. Through our cursory check, we did eliminate 221 signatures, and the cursory check involves determining, that everyone has printed their name, signed their name, put their address in, and also put in the date and the county. And the primary reason for those that were discounted were just the wrong city. Brandon, Hartford, etc. was the majority. Some put in a P.O. box. So we did track all that. In fact, I just sat down and reviewed it with Paula and Judy with the Spelleberg Pool, and we went through some of the actual petitions. So that left a total of 7,275 signatures. From there, we then did the 5% random sample, which is what the Secretary of State's office uses for their petitions that they receive in, as well as what they recommended for us. And the 5% sample of the 7,275 signatures, the sample size was to review 364 signatures. And those we did through the Secretary of State's voter registration. So we went through the actual names, matched the names with the voter registration. If we couldn't quite read the writing and we had an address we could read that was legible, we would, verify it that way. So we, made sure that we had a couple different ways to check. And as a result of that, we had 83 signatures that were declared invalid for various reasons. And of course, we have all that information tracked. That left a total of 281 valid signatures from that sample set. That 281 signatures was then divided by the total sample size of 364, And this represented the number of valid petitions in the group, which is 77.18%. And 77.18% of the 7,275, which was the number we received after the cursory check, resulted in 5,615 valid signatures. Required was 5,110, and so they more than complied with what was needed. They had an extra 505 signatures based on the voter registration totals the day that they turned in the petitions received from both Minnehaha and Lincoln counties. And so I do want to say thank you to Dave Bixler, our budget analyst, for putting these numbers together for me. I couldn't have gotten through all this without him kind of guiding me along on this. But anyway, so now the next step would be either we take no action, and this will go to a council meeting or the election of April 8, 2014, or we have to meet within 10 days to set a special election. So those are the two options.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
Should we do questions on each topic before?
Sure.
Okay, so questions on the Spellerberg Pool petition presentation. Councilor Staggers.
Yes, Lori, there have been a number of people that have wondered what if they had not come up with the 5,615 signatures, whatever it was, those valid signatures. Let's suppose they came up with 4,500. I mean, by your calculation.
Sure.
What happens then? Because they could still really actually have valid number of signatures,
No.
not just according to the...
Right, they still
Yeah.
could. I know that that administrative rule that the state law provides that we use does say that if there are not enough signatures based on the random sampling, that the petitions are considered not valid. But, you know, possibly in this case, we would have to go through every single signature rather than just having the random 5%. We would go through 100% of the signatures if that was the direction we were given.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Certainly, yes.
Okay, other questions for Lori regarding this petition? Okay, good. Thanks for your report on that.
Okay,
What's
and the next one, Shape Places, there is also a petition drive taking place on the entire Shape Places ordinance. Those petitions were taken out a week ago Friday, or registered, I should say, registered, and they started circulating. From what I understand, they're going to be bringing in petitions on Friday at 4 p.m. They need as well, you know, validated signatures, and it's the day that they bring them in, so I'm guessing around the 5,100 mark. And I will receive that information from both Minnehaha and Lincoln counties on Friday if they do bring them in that day. And then we'll go through the same process. We'll go through the cursory check, and we'll do the randomized check of those as well. But Friday at 5 p.m. is the deadline for that group, for petition group number 3. Petition group number 4 filed a registration today with our office this afternoon, and this is from the East River Rabbit Club. Let me see if I'm saying that right. Yeah, East River Rabbit Breeders Club. And they will have until the 26th, Friday the 26th at 5 p.m. to turn in signatures. Same process. They did not choose to refer the entire ordinance. Rather, they have specific language in there, and I don't know that City Attorney Fifley has had a chance to look through that, and I haven't had a chance to read through it in detail, but there are 2 sections that they have put specifically into the petition that they want looked at. One is, let's see, there's 2 here. One is for section 90.008, keeping of animals, and the other, and there's sections A through G under that, and I did email each of you a copy of this petition just earlier today. And the other section that they want to have on the petition is 90.078, licensing of animals and fowl. And so they have about 10 days to collect those signatures.
Okay, questions for Lori? Councilor Staggers.
Yes, right. Can you clarify that? I haven't had a chance to see what they're actually doing there. Are they actually deleting some material from the ordinance that was passed, or are they just simply adding, or is it a combination of both?
You know what? I have not had a chance today with everything going on to compare the language to the actual ordinance. It looks like to me, yeah, I would hate to say without really going through this line by line,
Okay.
and I don't think City Attorney Fifley has had a chance either. We will get that looked at tomorrow and let you know specifically what it is, if they're adding, if they're repealing, exactly what it is, what the difference is.
Other questions for Lori? Councilor Jameson.
Lori, I think you might have sent it, but could you send it again, both the swimming pool petition and the Snowgate petition? I just need the exact language. I don't want the other ones until they're official, but the ones that are official, if I could get the language readily together so that I could review them both.
Sure, I will get those. I'll just send it out to the group again, what the language was from each one.
Go ahead.
One other question. Did the Spellerberg folks, did they request a special election, or are they okay with waiting? Did they request anything?
They have not requested specifically. We just reviewed now the petitions, and I went through the process and just said, the two options are no action, that would hold the election in April of 2014, or within 10 days a special election would be called. But they have not specifically asked for a special election.
Thank you.
Other questions from council? Then I have a question. Lori, remind us, at what point do these items go online? I know that when folks run for city council, their petition, well, not the petitions necessarily, but we have options to put things online. Are we going to do that? We haven't really started too much on the 2014, but we certainly could put these two items and the language out there. Maybe I could work with the city attorney and see what we can put out there as far as language on those petitions. Because they are public documents.
Right.
I just wonder if that might help folks to kind of think about that.
Sure.
It might answer some of those questions. Folks might have the same questions that Councilor Jameson has. If they were online, it might be easier. Is that, yeah, that's, okay. If you could
Sure.
make that happen, that would be great,
Sure, we can do that.
I know it's early for 2014, but it would be helpful
Right.
at this point since it's top of the mind, so.
Yeah, no, and those are both initiatives, so we can just put the specific language, whereas the one for the shape places and the rabbit breeders are both referendum, which is why they have such a short period of time versus an initiative has 6 months. A referendum has until the effective date, so it shortens it considerably.
Good, thank you for answering that question as well. Because
I'm learning quickly.
Yes.
Yes.
Civics 101, right?
Yes.
Any other questions for Lori this afternoon? Well, we know this is keeping you busy. Thank
Yes.
you for...
And one more item.
Oh, you have one more? Okay,
We
all
need
right.
to call a special meeting on Friday. And this comes as a result of RFPs that have been sent out, and it's a time-sensitive public business for the approval of contracts for debris removal and stump removal and hanging and leaning tree removal to respond to imminent public health and safety threats caused by the recent ice storm. From what I understand, the RFPs are coming in at 5 p.m. on Thursday, and city attorney staff needs time, as well as I assume the purchasing team and finance team, to get those agreements put together, and then this group would need to meet to approve those documents, and possibly City Attorney Fifley has more to add to that.
Okay,
Okay.
so the plan then would be to meet sometime later on Friday to
Later on
give the
Friday.
attorney's team time to work. And then we also would only require a quorum, which is 5 council members, correct?
Correct.
And we know that we have one who is out of town
One
right
is
now.
gone.
I know.
I know, and we don't want to run
There's
into
some
Rex's
issues.
retirement.
Oh, we're having a change of venue.
Okay.
So we will work on scheduling, but just a note to council members that we will meet at some point in special session on Friday. It will not be a long period of time, but it will be in the afternoon, and I hope that at least 5 of us can be here, and so we'll have to wiggle schedules around, and I appreciate that. Okay, questions about that from anyone? Councilor Aguilar?
So how soon do we have to notify?
24 hours
Just
in
the
advance.
24?
Yep. Okay.
Okay.
Councilor Jameson, do you have a question?
A couple of us do have conflicts at 6 p.m. on Friday night that we would sure like to keep, so if we could do it before. Is that what the plan?
Oh, God, I hope we're done before
Okay,
that.
good,
Yeah.
okay. And then-
We're thinking afternoon sometime. We'll need to talk about Councilor Stagger's teaching schedule possibly.
Well, no, after 12 o'clock noon.
Oh, okay.
I'm okay.
You are?
But I thought they had to turn these in by 5 p.m.
Thursday.
Oh, Thursday, excuse me.
Yeah,
Okay,
5
good.
p.m. Thursday,
Oh,
which we talked about Thursday with the work session being at 4 o'clock, that would be perfect timing, but they
Yeah.
won't be ready that soon.
Okay.
That's pushing it a little too tight.
Okay.
And if I
Councilor
could, the RFP that's getting sent out,
Yes,
or that was sent out, could we get a copy of that? Do we have a copy of that?
certainly. All right, Mark said it is on the website.
Could you get it emailed to me?
Yes,
Thank you.
to all, okay.
Well, and then for those folks that might be wanting to find it, it is on siouxfalls.org under probably Public Works. Because there will be people that will actually want to do the thing, the RFP.
Sure.
So. Anything else for Lori? Lori, do you have anything else?
No, I don't.
Okay, any other questions for Lori? Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, before we go into council open discussion, I have asked the mayor's team to come in and give us an update on the storm, and they brought charts. And so it will be just a brief report. Mark, if you want to start, please.
Make it very brief. Thank you, council members. I have with me the co-chair of this operation, which is Chief Sedaris, and then the two co-chairs of the planning section of the Emergency Operations Center, which is Regan Smith and Kendra Simmons-Maw. And so if you have any questions, hopefully we can work through those. Just real quick to keep you on schedule, that essentially we've worked through the initial emergency, and we're really transitioning now into the recovery efforts of this major branch pickup program. And so today we were able to, after having one day in the neighborhoods yesterday, really capture what we believe the best way to do it. We're still having some lessons learned, but ultimately assembling those teams so we can not only continue to deploy them, but answer the question of the public, when will you be in my neighborhood? Okay. And so we have the operation has been branded Operation Timber Strike, and you'll understand that we've got 342 people today in this organization that is addressing this issue. There's 264 pieces of equipment that are currently rolling, addressing this major effort. The comprehensive plan has 4 key areas. The first is branch removal. And the priority is the neighborhoods and the park system, then the waterways. Today we'll talk mostly about just the neighborhoods, since this is essentially day 2 of neighborhoods. There's going to be an initial pass, and so that's what we've termed, that's what our maps have talked about. Some of the highest impacted areas will have multiple passes, so we'll talk about that. Then we expect that there will be a volunteer effort to help those that need help, and then there'll be additional passes as needed. Branch disposal. Today we have 10 branch dump sites operational. Some of those are overlap. 5 are for residential, 5 are for commercial. The branch hangers, we have teams of arborists that are driving in first the core, and they're essentially addressing all of the hangers that are hanging between the sidewalk and the curb on each side of the street. Everything on the house side of the sidewalk is the property owner's responsibility. And we today I think are around 30 arborist crews, and we're working to ramp that operation up more. There's so many hangars that exist. And then last, volunteer coordination, working with the 211 Helpline Center for 2 components, for people that need help and people that want to help the effort. They're going to be ready to share more details come this next Thursday. 2 graphics we want to bring your attention to. First, GIS helped us map all the 900 plus calls that came in from, and I apologize for people that are in the audience. This is on the website. We mapped the calls based on density, and so green is essentially 0 to 25 calls we received in that area for either a branch down over a sidewalk or in the road. And then the next area, as you go, is just like weather. The red essentially is where we had the highest amount of calls, and we would receive anywhere from 100 to 300 calls in those areas. Not sure how that's getting projected. Mm-hmm. And so that was the tool that we initially used to really garner where the highest impact areas were. So then as we started to formulate a plan on the best way to attack this issue, that was our starting point. We've split the city into 4 quadrants. North-south is split at Minnesota Avenue, and east-west is on 26th Street. Quadrant in the northwest is Area 1. Northeast is Area 2. southwest is Area 3, and southeast is Area 4. There are strike teams, as we've been managing them, been deployed in all 4 quadrants. The 2 colors that you see today, and again, this is very preliminary because we're using 1 day's worth of data to extrapolate the amount of area we hope to accomplish this week. The orange area is where we hope to make the first pass. Again, if you correlate that with the density map, that's where the highest amount of impact has been. And then the yellow is our initial projection on where we'll be next week. We do expect to drive every street, but the area that's shown in white, we'd like to not make a prediction on at this point in time based on productivity. Okay. Again, there's a major effort going on. It's very well coordinated. The reason for the RFP is that with FEMA rules, we want to maximize that we document things correctly, and if we do ultimately qualify for a presidential declaration that qualifies for FEMA reimbursement, we want to do it correctly. FEMA's been in our office all day today. And so we're to that point now where we have to transition from time and material contracts to, for example, the debris removal by the ton. And so now we'll start to deploy scales at our branch drop-off sites. So the scale people are coming in. The proposals for by the ton will come in tomorrow at 5. There was a pre-bid meeting earlier today, and then ultimately we'll bring those contracts to you on Friday. So that's a short update. If you have any questions, we can work to answer them for you.
Questions, Councilor Karski?
Clarifying for me, Mark, again on the trees. A tree on my side of the sidewalk that's overhanging the sidewalk or the street, the contractor, are they going to, and it has branches that are endangering the sidewalk or the street, are they going to take that branch that's hanging down?
They will. We'll actually cut it initially. We'll cut it at the property line. And if it's secure, that's where it will stay. The arborists have been trained that if we only cut it at the property line and it's not a safe branch, they'll reach further in and they'll grab it.
Okay.
But essentially, within the public right-of-way, what we've tried to make it clear is essentially from the sidewalk to sidewalk. If there are hangers in that zone, our contracted arborists will address them.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, Councilor Staggers.
Yes, at 69th and Cliff, are we going to be dumping a lot of wood there? I
We
noticed
will.
there was some construction being done there.
We will. We had as we start to map where the impacts are, we want to try to balance where those residents and or commercial contractors have to drive to minimize their drive time to have a branch drop-off site. That was a gap for us, and so we did start to identify open land late last week, and we were able to prep that site over the weekend. We signed a lease with the landowner, and we actually started taking branches there yesterday. So that's been very well received. We're opening up another contractor dump site, somewhat kitty corner south and west of the, it's on Benson Road and Hall, the Humane Society, sorry. And that's another contractor one, so I apologize. The key that we're seeing is in these sites, there's a lot of wood that's getting stacked up, but also from a traffic standpoint. So the more sites that we can open up, we can distribute that traffic. We're also in the process of coordinating the grinding effort because there's so much material yet to come in that now we're starting to grind that material, and ultimately, at this point in time, Mueller Pallet from T is doing it, and they'll haul it to the Poet ethanol plant, burn it for energy.
So at the 69th and Cliff, for example, how long will we be using that? How long will we have the wood on that land?
We signed a lease for 6 months. We at this point in time don't know how long that's going to be needed. I mean, I would say at a minimum 90 days that'll be utilized to some level. But I think just like anything, once the major effort's done, we'll start to close some of those sites. We'll grind that material, haul it off, and we'll restore it. But right now we have the ability to have that site for 6 months. Yeah.
Okay, any other questions from council?
Yes.
Councilor Rolfin.
So Mark, what I'm hearing then is we're going to go from a truckload or hour or whatever it is we're paying these guys now to a ton by ton.
That's correct.
And at each one of these sites, or we have contractor sites in it, we're gonna have scales on, and we'll be able to measure all that.
That's right.
And so that should be a lot more. That should be a better contract for us.
It will. I mean, right now we've got a number of what we call scouts in each respective area that are managing those contractors, and they're documenting their equipment time, they're documenting their production time. But ultimately, it is, from a documentation standpoint, it'll be simpler for us to just pay a contractor by the ton. It also incentivizes them to do more production.
Exactly. Okay,
Yeah.
that's what I was getting at. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay,
Well, thank you very much.
thank you. We appreciate it. Appreciate all the work. All right, council open discussion. Anything else council wants to talk about before we move on? Councilor Rolfing.
We do have a land use committee meeting immediately following this meeting, and we'll be talking about facade easement and the facade easement program, and hopefully some people will stick around for that. We have an interesting discussion, and I think we'll answer a bunch of questions, and we'll look forward to that.
Great, thank you. Any other open discussion from council? All right, I'm going to move on into our presentation, starting with the March monthly financial report. Tracy Turbeck, Director of Finance. Welcome, Tracy.
Good afternoon. Tracy Turbeck with the Finance Office. Here with the first quarter report for the end of March 2013. I will run through my typical economic update and then touch briefly on the general fund revenues and expenditures through the first quarter of this year, and then we can see what kind of questions you have at that point. Unemployment figures for the last 3 years are reflected here. You can see since the first of the year, the unemployment rate here in the Sioux Falls MSA has ticked down slightly. It ended the year at about 4.5%. In February, that came down to 4.4%. And by comparison, same time in 2012, it was 4.8%, and the year prior to that, it was 5.5%. So again, the unemployment picture continues to look very, very good here locally. Building permits, we're having just really a remarkable year so far. Last year was really a very good year, and 2013 is starting out to be a real barn burner, I suppose you'd say. The chart here, the green bar reflects the value of permits issued on a year-to-date basis. So you can see the green bar, as of the end of March, extends considerably beyond what it was a year ago, the red bar through March of 2012. Total value permitted through March is about $148 million, which is up about $87 million from last year through the first 3 months. That reflects about a 140% increase for the first 3 months. So it's really starting out to be just a real phenomenal year in terms of the construction activity. The activity isn't really isolated in one particular sector. Both residential and non-residential permits are up well over 100% by comparison to the first quarter of last year. Our sales tax tracking on a 12-month rolling basis, we continue to stay right around that 5% growth rate. As of the end of March, the year that ended March 31st, we had saw a 5.2% growth rate. A year ago, that was 5.4%, so we haven't seen a lot of change in that over the past year. You can see the line is almost as horizontal as it'll probably ever get on a chart like this, which is certainly a positive thing. We like to see it growing at a stable rate, and 5% is certainly a healthy rate, and reflects, I think, a pretty strong local economy. Our entertainment tax chart has dipped down slightly since the first of the year. It's still growing in a very solid way at 5.6% over the last year. However, you can see that rate of growth has come down a little bit. For 2012, the calendar year, we had grown at 7.2%, and that was really as high as it had been all of last year. So It's come down a little bit in the last couple of months, and I guess only time will tell if that's a start of a new trend or if it's simply backing off a little bit before it takes off at a higher pace. So that is something that we will continue to monitor each month as we get new data in. You can see 2 years ago we were at a 2.4% growth rate, so we are still significantly ahead of that pace. Looking at the general fund, revenues year to date and expenses year to date, you can see on the revenue side, and really for both revenue and expenditures, we're tracking right on with our budget. So there's really nothing remarkable to comment on in terms of the revenues or expenditures through March. Actual revenues through the end of March for the general fund was $19.6 million. Last year we were at $17.2 million, so our revenues are up in comparison to last year. Expenditures through March, $27.6 million compared to $28.5 million through March of last year, so our expenditures are down for the first quarter of this year. Revenues are at 15% of budget, which is almost exactly where they were last year. We were at 14% of budget last year through the first quarter, and our spending in the general fund is currently at, or through the end of March, was at 21%. So in other words, we've spent 21% of our budget. And a year ago, that was 23%. So we're looking very, very good in comparison to 2012 as well. I didn't put a slide in, but in your monthly updates, you'll see a kind of a recap of our capital improvement plan. The focus this month was on our capital plan. So you can take a look at that overview. I will mention that through March, we had put 34 projects out to bid. Those projects totaled about $16.7 million, and we averaged about 5 bidders on each project, so we're still seeing good competition for the projects that we are putting out to bid, and the low bids are coming in pretty consistently below estimated costs, so we're looking pretty good in our capital program as well. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Great, thank you, Tracy. Questions from council? Councilor Staggers.
Yes, on the building permits, Tracy, can I assume some of that is still the event center?
You know, I don't know off the top of my head if any event center work was permitted in the first 3 months. I think I do have a list of the larger projects here, and that's not on, nothing to do with the event center is on the list of larger projects. And I think you folks get this as well from the building services office. There's just a host of significant projects ranging from 1.3 million is as small as the list goes. There's about a dozen on the list, up to as high as 7.1 million for a warehouse project. Quite a few apartment buildings. About half of the list is made up of multifamily housing units, and then a variety of manufacturing and other types of commercial health services type of projects.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions from council? Councilor Rolfing?
Tracy, Councilor Karski and I were perusing this earlier, and under the event center on page 5, way at the bottom, we couldn't figure out how under the actual, you start with a balance of 101 million, have revenues of negative 360,000, expenditures of 6,000,001, and total a net change of negative 6.5 million. It wasn't, somehow my head wasn't wrapping around that. Can you help me?
Which part of it can I?
Under actuals.
Okay.
And how you added a negative and a positive to come up with a negative.
The expenditures are always treated as a negative. We're starting with a positive balance at the beginning of the year of about $102 million in that construction fund. And so the expenditure number is always treated as a negative number, reducing that beginning fund balance.
So
no, go ahead.
No, go. So really the 6,000,001 is an expenditure that should be a negative also.
That is an outflow of fund balance. That's correct.
But then why is it almost 400 or 350 or 360,000 a negative there with parentheses around it?
That would be an adjustment of the market value of the investments in that trust fund, so that the market value goes up and down based on interest rate changes and so forth. So they are mark to market each month. We hold those investments till maturity, and so they will eventually come up to their face value.
The bonds that we're holding.
Right. Well, they're government securities.
Yeah. So
But we are required for financial reporting purposes to adjust those each month to reflect any changes in the market value.
So it's like they're not worth as much, so we gotta. Yeah.
Essentially, that's it. If we were to sell them, if we were to have sold them at the end of March.
Now I understand it. Just had to
Right.
figure that out. Thank you.
Thank you for asking.
Councilor Jameson.
Thank you. On the same side of the event center question, if I could. We heard the other day, or a couple weeks ago, about the guaranteed maximum price of $99 million, some change. We borrowed 115. If we indeed only spend $99 million on the whole project, maybe within the addition of the $2 million that we received from Sanford, but within that ballpark, the other money that we've borrowed, this is all predicated on if we did on the 99, but what would happen to those dollars that we didn't use but we borrowed? Are they returnable, or they need to be held out so that?
I'm relatively confident that there won't be any significant dollars remaining once the project is completed. The guaranteed maximum price relates only to the cost of constructing the building.
Just the building.
So on top of that, we've got our architectural and engineering fees. We've got the furnishing fixtures and equipment that aren't part of the construction account for a significant part of that difference as well. So there are other costs that get rolled into that $115 million.
Okay, very good. Thank you. That one other, if I could, we're obviously in the midst of cleaning up a big mess in the city and utilizing dollars that we didn't intend to spend. Help me understand the reserve process on the general fund. If the 25% is a threshold that the council set, was it a goal, or was it an ordinance saying we must not? Do you remember, does the language say we must not fall below 25% at the end of the year, or we should not?
It's a goal.
Just a goal?
Right.
So if we were to fall underneath that at any time, it's really an intention to get above that. It isn't by ordinance. So we'd have to make other cuts in order to achieve that.
Right. There is no ordinance that addresses the reserves. I believe that was a council resolution that set the 25% as a goal.
That's correct, Council.
And I believe that same resolution requires that should we ever fall below that 25%, the administration has to develop a plan on how to address that situation.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Okay. Councilor Karski.
Tracy, going back to the capital monies that we were talking about, the bids, you said 16 million. Is that what we estimated or what we bid?
I believe that's the total of the amount that has been put to bid at this point.
Okay, and they've been coming in about, I saw it somewhere and I was looking for it. Was it about 14% under estimate?
That's correct.
Okay, I'm just kind of looking forward to thinking where our budget might end up at. So, okay, thank you.
Okay. Councilor Rothman.
I have one other concern, and that is the entertainment tax. I know that's something that Councilor Enderman and I look at real closely when it's going. I see 5 months of this going down, and I don't. How can I? We need to. I don't know what the reason is for it. I see things kind of booming around in entertainment. I see. I'm down at Larry's place. It seems like weekly, and it's full. And I see entertainment going full bore around here, and I don't understand why the entertainment tax is down in Sioux Falls. Can you shed any light? Is there any reason that you can see that jumps out at you?
Well, let me clarify one thing. The entertainment tax revenues are not down from last year. They are up.
I know, but they're trending down
They were
right now.
going up at 7%, they're now going up at about 5.5%. So, I mean, that's.
Right, I
So
understand that.
they're not going down. How to account for that change in the rate of growth, I guess 3 months of, since the end of the year really isn't enough data to say if that's a trend. It appears to have peaked, at least over the last 6 months, at the end of December. But really, and that's why I prefer to look at that 12-month rolling growth rate, is that really does take into a longer period of time. If you look at only a couple of months and compare that to the same 2 months last year, those numbers will jump around. But one big event in town can move the needle on the entertainment tax, because that sales tax base is so narrow. It doesn't apply to all sales. It's just a really narrow range of the economy. So the Summit League tournament, for example, the weekend that's held in town certainly would have an impact. And if that's
but we've been going down for about 5 months now. Since November, it hit its peak in November of 12. And we've been going down, so that's November, December, January, February, March. And it concerns me just a little bit when we've got that. So I guess I'm saying let's keep an eye on that. And
absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Councilor Jameson?
Just to think more about that, the relevant issue is the amount of money that we're collecting and debt obligations that are put towards that and funding towards other facilities. If I understood it right, we somehow collect $5 million in a year or so, and half of that goes to debt service. So if we did fall way down and stopped collecting as much, I mean, we're not in any jeopardy of losing any of our ability to cover the debt service.
No, absolutely not.
Right.
And the budget was based on a 5% growth for 2013, and we are still above that. Even if we fell below that, I guess it would have to fall an awful long ways before it would be a serious concern.
Thank you.
Okay. Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate your work. Moving on in our presentations this afternoon, 2012 Washington Pavilion Report and Financials. Larry Toll, President of the Washington Pavilion. Welcome.
Madam Chair, Councilors, I'm Larry Toll, President of the Washington Pavilion. I appreciate the discussion around the entertainment tax, because all of the funding for the pavilion comes via the entertainment tax. So the operational support, the OSEP, and the CIP are all funded through that process. Our auditors have just finished their field work with us in the last week or so and have made some recommendations based on our financials that you have a copy of. And the Board of Trustees today at noon adopted those changes. One was to recharacterize an expense and capitalize it. The other was to take a look at an asset released from a one-time adjustment, and they adopted that as well. So what you see for 2012, year-to-date, is a operating loss, if you go down to about 4 or 5 lines from the bottom, an operating loss for 2012 of almost $1,900. And then what we've added on is the money that was collected from the naming of the Mary W. Summerville Hall of $65,000, and then the one-time adjustment that the auditors had recommended. So with those transfers, we have a net increase in assets for the pavilion for 2012 of $95,578. I'd be happy to address any questions about that. You can see that admissions ticket sales were a little softer in 2012 than they were in 11, and some of that is some of that's the economy, I think. Some of it is number of shows we have. So you'll see we were down 290,000 in admission and ticket sales. We're still right around 30-some% of our total revenue comes from earned income. Likewise, when you get down to program expenses under the expense side, you'll see that our costs were down over $100,000 there. So they kind of track one and another. So if there's any questions on the financials that I could help you with, I could address those.
Great, thank you, Mr. Toll. Councilor Rolfing.
Larry, what's the, I see under cafe, you've got about 430,000. Do you know what the gross take was on that?
It's probably somewhere in the 650,000 range, I'm guessing. Maybe a little more than that. Actually, let me think about that. Probably closer to 900,000. Last year we did 53 or 4 wedding receptions, plus our normal daily food service in Leonardo's, and we do some catering. So it's a big part of our operation, obviously.
Yeah, under a normal restaurant situation, I think you should be up real close to $1 million.
To get that, yeah.
To get that.
We've got a great chef right now who manages the finances of the kitchen very, very well.
Okay.
Great. Other questions? Councilor Karski.
Larry, the pavilion management contract, just give me I'm trying to remember what are the time frame. What does that run?
We've had the contract since the pavilion opened in '99. We were here last year for a renewal of the contract that extends now through I think December of 2017.
Okay. And the assets, you say on here the net increase in assets, but we don't. Do you report to us what your assets are?
We have a balance sheet. Net increase in assets for a nonprofit is basically excess revenues over expenses. If you look at year end where we are this would be since the Washington Pavilion Management Inc. started, we still are carrying a ending net asset of a negative $203,000.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions from council? Councilor Staggers.
Yes, Larry. This will probably be reported in the Argus Leader. And so in being reported in the Argus Leader, is it going to be that we fell short by 1,900 or we're ahead by 95,000?
You know, I've been misquoted a lot, Councilor Staggers, and I think you have too. So how they report it, I don't know. I've not talked to anybody from the Argus. I look at the operational number, the negative 1,900. That is the year over year. That needs to be positive. I wish, you know, if we'd known that a little earlier, I probably could have got some checks together to make it positive. That is breaking even, and that's it beats losing money, but it's not as good as being positive.
Other questions? Councilor Rolfing.
I want to correct myself, Larry. Your take should be about 750,000 on the restaurant there, not $1 million. Doing it the way I was thinking. So
okay.
But that's good. I just wanted to give you a little round figure there. And by the way, I ate there the other day, and it was very, very good. So thank you.
Thank you. And we'd love to see you more than once a week, but let me give you a little more update. Washington Pavilion Management Inc. is a 501c3, a nonprofit corporation. We have one thing we do, and that's the Washington Pavilion. It's the only thing we do. We have 15 board members. They are all local people that serve on the nonprofit and provide great leadership. Our mission statement is to educate, enrich, inspire, and entertain, and those first 3 are really hard to make money on, but it's that kind of outreach that we do that we're so proud of. To the question of the contract, it's obviously a city-owned building. All the monies we get are from the entertainment tax. So as that goes up and down, obviously that affects a lot of our budgeting process. I don't think it's ever impacted the operating support that you give us. Last year, $1,388,000. It has impacted as that, particularly in 2009 and 10 when entertainment tax was going down. It did impact the OSEP and CIP budget. We were cut back significantly. But it's, we spend of that $1.39 million basically you give us for operations. We do all of the utilities, the security, building maintenance, building cleaning, all of those piece parts. We spend about $1.2 million of it just directly on maintaining your facility. We have an economic impact in this community. If you recall, all the arts organizations under the auspices of the Sioux Falls Arts Council did a study on the economic impact of the arts in Sioux Falls. And the number turned out to be around $35 million. The pavilion is about $20 million of that. It has a real positive impact. We have $2.7 million in salaries, and we've generated last year $316,000 in tax. About $110,000 of that comes right back to the city in the 2% sales tax and the entertainment tax. The unknown factor, I think, when you think in terms of economic development of impact of the pavilion on this community is we see a lot of people as the health systems in town are trying to recruit people from out of town. We see high-tech companies that are recruiting from out of town. We see a lot of their people coming to the pavilion, and I think we make the city look larger because of things like the symphony, like the shows we put on, like the traveling shows that come in and rent from us. So I think we have a real positive impact there. Our outreach last year, we touched over 33,000 people. The really interesting part of that is over 20,000 of those were outside of the walls of the pavilion. We go to places like the banquet, Juvenile Detention Center, Multicultural Center. We're at the ADA Festival, Children's Care Hospital, Dalrymple, Touchmark. We have a program now in 12 of the elementary schools, Title I schools, where we provide after-school programs in art and science, and we do that every week. We've been at Habitat events, Jazz Fest, Juneteenth, the Youth Night at the Sioux Falls Stadium, a lot of things with OLLI, the Ochsner Lifelong Learning Institute. We have a group called DAPA at the Pavilion, Dakota Academy of Performing Arts, we merged with 3 years ago. And they do plays for living, and they do outreach these are high school kids that go into junior highs, and they talk about things like racism and bullying and drug use. And they reached 3,000 kids last year. So those are the things that when you think in terms of educating, inspiring, and enriching, it's great to watch those kids get confidence by learning about acting, and whether they will ever end up on Broadway is probably a long shot, but they have the self-confidence and they have an experience that will help them get through life. What else is going on? Our traffic last year was right around 375,000 people. I've reported to you last year that our day events, we keep a calendar by venue, by hour. In 2011, we had 1,399 day events. In 2012, we had 1,490. The Art Center traffic, well over 42,000, more than 86,000 through the Science Center. With money that you appropriated, the Wells Fargo Cinedome now has digital technology, which is a lot easier to use than those old rolls of film that we used to have to change out. It's if you have a home TV HD, which is 1,080 lines, the projector in the Cinedome has 4,000 lines. We're actually, Nat Geo was talking with us, and we found that their films don't meet our standards. They're going to have to upgrade how they do their filmmaking to be able to mesh with our technology. The Raven Children's Studio in the Arts Center was upgraded this year. We invested money in that to make it fresher, cleaner, more appealing, and you can tell by the dwell time, kids coming in and staying there. This Thursday afternoon, the African American History Museum people will do the kickoff and launch of their events. They have, it's really a spectacular display. You may have followed that we were able to raise money to buy the Northern Plains Tribal Art Collection, which was seized by the IRS, and we bought that back, and in fact are converting what was the old Egger Library, which is beyond the Everest Gallery on the 3rd floor. It's in the northwest corner of that building, and most people have never been in it. We're in the process of, with the money we raised from that and a very, very kind contract from Lloyd Companies, are in there, and that will be a Native American gallery that will open off of the Everest as soon as the Sioux Falls, the fine art of Dr. Seuss are gone. We'll open that up and have a grand opening for that gallery. Obviously, we are celebrating the fine art, sculpture, and taxidermy of Dr. Seuss, and a lot of science events along with that. How could I not tell you about, we had 16,000 hours of volunteer service last year. Think about that. That's the equivalent of 8 full-time people. That's $250,000 donated by people in this community to help us. Our membership was up about 3% to almost 3,300. And one of the things, we had a grant, I think I may have told you about, for arts education, and we're using that money. We've hired a professional organization called TRG Arts to come in and help us in pricing of the hall and how we market the hall. And you may notice a difference when you come in to a show now. We will fill that hall from front to back, side to side, and so you will always think you're in a crowd, and you did a great job in buying your seats. So they're helping us go through a lot of issues to make us more efficient, more professional, understand our patrons and our donors better so that we take good care of them. Anything more? One other thing I would offer to you is Sioux Falls is, we're very proud. I don't know if any of you have been into the gallery yet to see the presentation, but let me show you one thing. That is a 12 by 12 Siouxian rendition of Sioux Falls, and that was painted by our curator. She was preparing for this for a long time. That's only one of many panels that she painted, but I was thinking, it would look great to have that on the city website with the city council in front of it, and I thought, well, I could ask for your permission. Maybe I could just Photoshop you in, and then you can post it on your website. But it is such a great depiction of what we've got going on right now, and it's please come over, and if you want to come over and have your picture taken as a group, we would be pleased to entertain you.
Well, we would have to make sure we wore the proper hats if we were doing that.
We have, the sculptures are really quite interesting. There are 6 of them, and the Cat in the Hat is in front of the box office if you've not seen that, but it's being offered at a mere $150,000. So if you'd like to buy the whole collection, we'll try to work a deal for you. Questions I can answer?
Questions from council. Councilor Staggers.
Yes, Larry. In your presentation, I think you mentioned the city giving $1,900,000. Did I hear that correctly, or approximately?
The operational support that you saw in the financials, I think, was $1.39 million.
Right.
Yep.
Does the other include capital improvement or something?
No, that is not. The capital improvements are in the OSEP and CIP budget.
So you mentioned 1.9, I think, didn't you?
Oh, I may have said 1.39.
Oh, okay. Well, how much was the CIP and OSEP for last year?
I'd subject to check. I want to say probably around $1 million, okay, both combined. Mm-hmm. And I think there's I know there's around $1 million in this year's budget as well.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Well, then I'd wanted to highlight one event that you didn't mention, and that is a high school band that played on the stage of the pavilion, and it's the highlight of those kids' band careers to do their concert there. So it's an amazing treat. It is, and we try to make, we don't make money at everything we do. We try to do outreach on things like that. On the band festival, their home was in the pavilion.
Sculpture Walk is going to have an exposition this year with the 40 artists that show up that weekend will be in the lobby of the pavilion, and they will have, besides bringing, most of them will be bringing their own large sculpture, but they'll be bringing smaller sculptures, and so they will be there for Saturday and Sunday selling their smaller sculptures, and obviously some of the ones on the street are 10 to 50,000. These are, as sculptures go, more reasonable. But while they're doing that the 4th and 5th, we will have Arts Night on the 4th on the stage, which is one of our big events. We've got 85 pieces of art that were donated by local, regional, and national artists that will be auctioned. We'll also have the play Little Mermaid that'll be playing in the Belbus that weekend. And just to make it more complicated, we've invited Jazz and Blues and the Symphony to have a small concert on the second floor lobby during this so that there's a little something for everybody.
Wow. Keeping us busy. Thank you. Thanks for your
Madam
report.
Chair.
Thanks for your work. Yes, Councilor Rolfing.
I mentioned that I'm down there, it seems like weekly, and it isn't because my wife drags me down there, it's because I want to be there. The things that I don't want to go, I don't go to, but for the most part, I do want to be down there, and we have really got a jewel. And a lot of that is because of you, Larry, so thank you, and thanks to your staff.
And you hit it, it's the staff. The one thing I think we've learned is that we are big enough that the talent level doesn't have to be the leader of the pavilion. I look at, the more I know about art, probably the more dangerous I become. So it's the staff that is, we've upgraded the shows we bring. People can count on those. We're going to 2 performances of every series show this year, and so we have already renewed, we already have more seats sold right now than we did all of last year, and we're not done yet. So it's going to be we've got a great future, and with Warhorse coming, which will be everything I've heard about it, it's a spectacular play. And then Jersey Boys next May will.
Take note, folks. Councilor Jameson.
I have a more of a question and a comment, questions for the council, not for Larry, just so when you're done, if we could.
Okay, all right. Anything else for Larry? Great, thank you so much. Appreciate your work. Councilor Jameson, go ahead.
Sure. I certainly think that the pavilion provides a huge value to our community, but listening to the presentation, it started me thinking, and I, with some trepidation, bring this up, but the debt service is about to be finished on the pavilion and the convention center. And some years ago, was it 15, when they proposed this whole project and sold it to the public, there was a promise that it would make money. And I'm just wondering if it's worth our time and if we should just owe it to due diligence to follow through, to go back and look at how that was supposed to unfold and just see how close we are or aren't to the mark. Because I get it from other people who don't particularly care for the pavilion, that say it's a big money loser and, you know, we should have never done that, stuff like that. And I argue that it's a great investment for us, but just wondering if the fiscal committee would be interested, or if this body would even be curious to just see how close we are or aren't to the mark, and whether it's worth discussing. But we have new projects that are coming forward, new capital projects potentially that could have similar expectations. And if we don't ever hold it accountable or kind of check up on it, you know, we have the ability. We've got this all in our hindsight now to see what was proposed and promised, and now we know where the numbers are. And if it's any value, and I can do it all on my own or some other time, but if the body thought it was interesting, a fiscal committee could sure probably look at it.
Councilor Karski.
Just trying to put together, how would you go about doing that? Do we have tapes from meetings at that time? How would you go about researching that, those numbers, those projections? Where would that data come from?
You know, 15 years ago, wasn't that long ago, we could find it, I don't think, without any trouble, but
Mr. Toll, would you
Mr.
like to
Toll
step
might
forward?
even have it in his wallet. Who knows?
There's a document called the Webb Report that was done on the pavilion years ago, and I mean, that might be a basis to start from. I believe most of the ideas and the thoughts of where the money would come and where it wouldn't come were totally wrong. But I think it's a good place to start to say, okay, here is kind of the mindset going into the start of the pavilion that we'd be happy to work with you on any of that.
So if I might, as chair, then toss out this idea, because you're also talking about this consultant that's helping you work more efficiently, and you're telling us those initial reports were wrong. Maybe we just need to, as a council, hear that. We need to say, here's what it originally was, we thought, and here's what it really is, and here's where it could be based on the studies we're doing now. Is there some value in that sort of a report? That's something you would be comfortable with, Mr. Toll?
Yeah, we could, well, yeah. You know, I can give you a framework of what we could do.
I would agree with that. I think there's a story here, and it's an honest story, and it's fair, and it's what it is.
Yeah, we want to be totally transparent, not only with you, but with the community. And
right. I would.
Well, I guess then if I might just dovetail with that then too, is I'm looking at my notes based on and we all saw that report from the Arts Council based on the economic impact. You know, $20 million pumped into our economy every year is pretty significant numbers. I'd like to see what did they think it was going to be in the 90s.
You know, and the interesting thing is, and I didn't mention it, but for the most part, if you look at any of our events, and we track them by zip code, we'll have, in the Science Center, for example, we'll have all 50 states here. But the typical show might be 60 to 65% from Sioux Falls. The rest come from outside. The big shows, I mean, we draw from most of our art shows, see 30-some states. We'll do the same for some of our Broadway type shows that they come from all over. So it's people coming to town, and that study documented people from out of town spend a lot more per person than the people in town, obviously.
Exactly. Other comments on this topic from council? I am going to then just kind of speak for us and ask Jim David to work with Mr. Toll in terms of coming up with that report. There is no timeline on that, but it is a conversation we want to have in coming months. If Jim would work with you on that,
Yeah,
that'd be awesome.
What we can do is come up with kind of a skeleton and show you the skeleton and see where your interests lie, and before we invest a lot of time in it on both sides, and see where your interests are.
That'll be great.
Great.
Thank you very much. All right. Good conversations. Moving on. Presentation of 3 audit reports. Rich Oaksall, Internal Audit Manager.
Good afternoon, Council. We have 3 short reports. These were approved at our April 4th Audit Committee, reviewed and approved. The first one we'll look at is that follow-up on the status of audit recommendations at 13-01. This is something we do every year. It's required by our charter, and it's also required by professional auditing standards to have some sort of process in place and then report to the board, which would be the City Council in this case, the results. We looked at our audits from 2011 and looked at the audit recommendations that we made to see where they're at. The bottom line is we had considerable progress has been made. Majority of recommendations have been implemented. Sometimes it takes a while to get implementation when the management agrees to do that. There can be budget issues or software issues, or sometimes it takes what would seem to be a lot of time to get something implemented. Others can be implemented even before the audit is finished. So it's kind of in that range or that spectrum of time to get things implemented. And when we make a recommendation, it's simply that we're not management. Management is responsible for their area. We simply come in as another set of eyes and report what we see, make a recommendation. They're obviously free to not agree or maybe partially agree, but often we do get agreement and do get implementation. So if you have any questions about any specifics, I'd be happy to answer that for you. So.
Okay, questions from council? Okay. Oh, yeah, go ahead, Councilor Jameson.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Councilor Uppenbach. If I just want to make sure I share this with the council, the rest of the body that's not on the audit committee. When they go through all these audits and make these recommendations, the Rich said it, but I just got to say it again. The administration takes almost all of those all those recommendations and implements them. And so in some cases, if they decided they didn't think they needed to do that or wanted to kick back, push back, it would come back through the council and we say, well, they're not doing this and we really think they should. But I just really wanted to stress that the administration is really doing all of those recommendations, and that's really a good sign of cooperation, and that the advice and the comments that Rich is giving them are smart recommendations. So
great, good to know. Councilor Rolfing.
I am going to point out one, if you would look on page 4 at the bottom of page 4. And this is something that study is being done right now on the fixed route fares for SAM. We're going to end up having to deal with this, and I just pointed out to you that these fares haven't been raised, haven't been looked at basically since 1995. That's almost 20 years, folks. And we subsidize it tremendously right now, but whether we can continue to do it at the level we're doing it right now is questionable. So just be ready.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Anderson.
And I will just, to reply to that, Councilor Rolfing, we have looked at this. The PTAB committee looks at it every year. It has been brought to the council since I've sat on the council. It's been brought to us at least a couple times about the fares. It's something that is a continual concern, trying to keep the fares at a rate that citizens at that income level can afford. So I do agree with you. It is going to be a challenge in the future, but it is one that we are monitoring.
Right.
Good, thank you. Other comments? Any other questions about this one in particular? Okay, thank you.
Okay, the next one is 13-02, it's the Veolia Technical Solutions Contract, and we have Bob Capel here. He's the environmental manager. He oversees that contract. This was a request by management. When we did our annual audit plan, we emailed the department directors if there was something they wanted included on the plan, and this was one that came up. We hired Veolia in 2007 to manage the household hazardous waste facility, which is on North Cliff, right across the street from the street department and right next to the branch drop-off. That's it's piling up as we speak. If you haven't had a chance as a council member to go out to the facility recently, I'd urge you to do so. They've expanded the physical facility. They're using a lot of recycled material for furnishings. And Mr. Capel, I'm sure would be happy to give you a tour of the facility. It does a lot of business there. And Veolia manages that for us. There are Veolia employees that accept the material, make sure it's handled safely and properly labeled. And then the company comes in with a truck regularly and takes the material away and disposes of it safely. So we looked at, are we getting charged the correct rates? That was one of the big questions, and we determined that we were being billed according to the contract. And then we also looked at, are there some ideas that would help improve the RFP process? This contract expires this year, and we came up with a couple of the recommendations there in the report that will help improve the next contract. This was kind of the first time we went through it. We had some ideas that we think will make it just a little bit better. And management concurred with both of those agreements for the RFP process. So if there's any questions, we'd be happy to try and answer those.
Yes, Councilor Staggers.
Yeah, Rich, you mentioned that they come in with a truck and then take this away.
Yes.
I just assumed they would take it to our own dump. Are they taking it elsewhere, or do you know?
Well, a lot of this is material you probably don't want in the landfill. Would that be correct, Mr. Capel? It could be potentially dangerous material that we don't want. Just
so they're sending most of it elsewhere, is that?
Yes.
Okay.
And properly disposing of it according to EPA requirements.
Okay.
Once in a while, things come in that are very, very dangerous, and I remember, I forget what the item was called, but it was I want to say a little old lady brought in some stuff from her deceased husband that he used in his hobby, and it was extremely dangerous material. It wasn't something that they would normally accept, but because it was so dangerous, they could not, in good conscience, let her leave with that material, so they kept it and figured out the proper way to dispose of it. And so occasionally you have those instances where something very, very dangerous comes in. It's not common, but it happens. So.
Other questions on this one? I would just comment that some council members have been out there. We used it as a stop along a tour route at one point, and I would just remind folks of the amazing artwork that is the light fixtures in that very cool building.
Yeah.
They are made of recycled bottles and recycled milk jugs, and they were commissioned by local art to be done by local artists. It's a pretty cool thing. So drop off your paint from your basement, but then ask if you can go in and see the light fixtures, because it's pretty cool. So.
And I would point out, Mr. Staggers, that a lot of the material, most of it is taken away, but obviously there's stuff there that people can come in and sort of take off the shelves, paints and whatnot that they can use. Just come in and look and take it away.
Do your own custom color mixing.
Exactly. So.
Thank you.
Okay, the third report is on the street department purchasing. Again, this was a request of management when we asked for ideas for our annual audit plan. Obviously, it's very simple. One objective is the city street department purchasing materials according to the city policy. The short answer would be yes, they are. We did a sample and looked at their procedures, and we found that they are in compliance with our city purchasing manual. We did have 2 recommendations there to improve the process, and again, the management concurred and will plans to implement those recommendations. So, if there's any questions.
Questions on that report? Okay. Thank you very much. Thanks for your work. Thanks for the administration work as well. I know audits are always a little nerve-wracking, or they might be. Appreciate that. That is the end of our agenda. I would ask if there's anything else for open discussion. As I adjourn this meeting, we'll have a land use committee meeting that will begin in 10 minutes. By the Carnegie clock, that'll be 5:25. So this meeting is adjourned.